And we're ready to get started.
He's working the room.
Five or six.
If you would all rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag Thank you. My name is Therese Butler, and I'd like to call our board working meeting to order. I'll let, to my far right is Diane Flores. She's our recording secretary. Sitting right beside me is Walter Yazzie, our general manager, and I will let everyone else introduce.
Hi, I'm Campbell Cheney, assistant treasurer.
I'm Joyce Howard, treasurer.
Dan Hunniger, Vice President. There you go. Mark Eckert, Director.
Well, go ahead.
Chuck Hill, Secretary.
Don Grimm, Vice President.
Thank you. Along with the original agenda items that were sent out a couple days ago, we do have a couple of additional agenda items, and as we get to those points in today's meeting, I'll go ahead and announce them. Most of the agenda items are very minor. The first one we'll take care of right now, and this is to approve the board meeting minutes from our September 28th board meeting. Our recording secretary, Diane, has already submitted those to all of the directors. We in turn have had the opportunity to provide edits, and so at this point I'm asking for a motion to approve the board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among the board members? No. Any discussion among individuals in the audience? No. That being said, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, aye. Aye. And all those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Our next item on the agenda, as you can tell by the agenda, this is primarily to try and work through and clean up the remaining issues we have to move forward with finalizing a budget, or at least having it to the point where in 2 weeks we're looking to have our town hall on the budget presentation. So we're trying to take care of the loose ends that are out there as of today. The Finance Committee had a budget meeting dealing with the operations budgets for each of the departments. That was last Friday. However, we did run out of time and did not have the opportunity to finish all of those presentations. So this item on the agenda is to hear the presentations by fitness, our IT, and HR departments. And so I'd like to invite at this time Jeanette, our Director of Fitness, to come on up and complete her presentation on the operating budget. The operating budget is just the operations. It's the money we use on the day-to-day basis to run the association. It's not the reserves, but it includes the day-to-day operations. So Jeanette, please take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeanette. I am the Director of Wellness and Fitness here at Saddlebrook 2, and our Wellness and Fitness Department, our job is to provide classes and programs to help increase your active daily living, to make your active daily living easier through taking classes or personal training or attending wellness seminars. Yesterday we had a wellness speaker here about red light laser therapy and what that can do for you. With this year's budget, although my revenue is up quite a bit, so are my expenses. It is quite difficult to... Oh, sorry, that's my watch. It's quite difficult to get instructors to come all the way out here to teach a class and to pay people at a proper rate. All of our rates are increasing, as well as our front desk. Our minimum wage is increasing, so the price of classes will stay at $7, but I am proposing an increase to the monthly class pass. The monthly class pass, I analyze every month to see what the average class price is for somebody that purchases a monthly class pass. And in August, the average price was $2.50. That makes it so I cannot even break even. I will also be increasing or proposing an increase in our personal training prices. Same problem there. All of our prices and salaries are increasing, so our prices need to follow that as well, so I can still pay them what they are worth and to still get people to come here and teach. Space is a continual issue for me. I have to share the Mariposa room with many clubs, so I can't run classes in the afternoon. Usually the Mariposa room is being taken up. I have moved yoga into the ballroom. Today I had 40 people in yoga this morning when I taught. The snowbirds are back. And so the ballroom will fill up with 45 people in yoga on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I do invite you to come. It's a great space to have yoga class. Like I said before, the constant struggle for space becomes an issue because everybody wants to take class at 9:15. And I can't offer 10 classes at 9:15. I can offer one. I don't have room. I often get a lot of complaints also about having several personal trainers going at the same time. So we often use the Paloma room for personal training, and I share that with the spin club. And that is a space issue for me as well. Any other questions? Okay. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jeanette.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the time. Next up will be Steve Hernandez, our IT director.
Thank goodness.
Hi, I'm Steve, the IT manager for Saddlebrook 2. Our budget really is for everything that's existing to make the operation run on a day-to-day basis, as much uptime as possible. And speaking of that, this morning we had a network outage at the Preserve Golf Course maintenance yard. So I ran up there to check it out, and it was just the DSL router, fortunately. Our costs are projected to be the same as they were this year for 2023. So there's no real increase. We're trying to cut back on some of the expenditures, especially toward network provisioning and phone service provisioning. But that's really the only area that we can cut back in. And with Comcast coming into the community, there's an opportunity for us to partner with them for business service and move away from CenturyLink. And that's really the only area that I know of that we can, kind of trim out. Any questions?
Before questions, can I add a little bit to that? Steve, you said that the budget didn't increase, but if people look at it, it looks like there's a huge IT increase, but that is a result of consolidating some cost from other departments into Steve's department. And some of the increase is also explained by the fact like Lee Chinook this year doubled their maintenance cost. So they went from like a $3,000 service charge up to a $6,000 charge. So you'll see that in 2023. We consolidated phone services into Steve's department. And so the bills really didn't go up too much, but we consolidated into his department. So when you look at the budget bottom line for IT, it does look like it increased.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, the money's still being spent there, but it's in my department now.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I also would like to add that while Alicia Knock, who protects our network and maintains our backups, while yes, it did increase last year significantly, that was because they inadvertently went about 4 years without increasing anything at all. And when they suddenly noticed their error, they had to bring it in line with where costs are today. Next up on the agenda is Lori Diener from our HR division.
Hello, everyone. Got you some backup slides. Guess I didn't keep up. Use a projector, so. Oh, you need one of those backlights, I forgot. What the numbers are? Just take it. I make 10. Okay. All right, sorry, I didn't know we would, All right, so I am your Director of Human Resources. My name is Lori Diener. Human Resources is responsible for the entire employee life cycle. So pre-hire all the way through termination and exit. We really do have a dedicated group of professionals that work for Saddlebrook 2. We worked really hard to build a team here with the expertise needed to maintain your community. In terms of operating goals, we continue to recruit talent, create a positive employee experience here, and we continue to improve efficiency and reduce costs. Now, we are not a revenue generating department by any means. We do spend money, and I just handed the board a couple items here where we've tried to reduce costs. So we've worked really hard over the last few years to use our tool, and our tool is Paylocity. That is our everything, so that helps us recruit people, onboard people, manage their benefits, manage their employee file, manage their performance evaluations. It integrates time and attendance. It also is our one and only place that we communicate with all employees. It's our employee hub. It is where employees go to find out how much they were paid, where they can download their pay stubs. They can see how much time off they have. So it is really an important tool. And I know that it comes up often about how expensive this is, because it does run us about $71,000 a year. But through automation, there is a return on investment analysis for just this year, and it shows a $52,000 savings. That is, if we had to do this by hand and as a person, it would be costing $52,000. Instead, we're using this tool to its, well, I won't say to its fullest, because we're still implementing automation, but we are using this tool to offset the cost of actual humans. So when you see that big number there for payroll expenses, please know that it's not just running payroll and filing our quarterly taxes and filing our annual taxes and making sure everyone has a clean W-2 at the end of the year. It helps us manage our people. And we have over 200 employees right now. So that's a lot of moving beans that we have to keep track of. So there you go. That is how it breaks down to $71,000 on my budget. The other thing we've done to help save the company money is improve our safety record. That is, we've reduced workforce injuries or work-related injuries year over year, 30% since 2019. And this year we're on track to decrease another 30%. And you're like, oh, that's great that our employees go home with all their fingers and toes. Yes, that is awesome that they go home with all their fingers and toes. But what it also does is it decreases our workers' comp premiums, which ends up being a big cost in our burden. So at one point, we were paying $99,000 a year for our workers' comp premiums. This year, we're paying $62,000. And how that changes, and it's slow to change, is that we continue to show improvement in reducing workplace injuries. So we don't make money, but we try to save it. So then we can spend more. No. All right, so that's that. Generally, our budget is pretty stable. It consists of, labor, myself, and another HR person. And our HR expenses. Our HR expenses are things like name tags, compliance services that make sure that we are in compliance with the federal laws, FMLA, COBRA, HIPAA, things like that. So they're necessary. We also use that line for background checks, which have actually doubled in price in the last year because there's new legislation. Each county has its own process now. We are investing in training at the tune of about $33,000 next year, proposing to. This includes safety training, customer service training, and other compliance training. So hopefully we will be able to implement some more training. This is actually the largest training budget I think we've had. So that's fantastic. And then we've set aside some money for employee gifts, and that means if departments haven't had a workplace injury in a while, we might send them lunch. We may buy some things for them to raffle off. This also includes our annual employee appreciation event coming up in December. Happens once a year. We like to give our employees $25 gift cards at that event, and also buy some big ticket items that we can raffle off. So we also buy birthday cakes monthly. So that's kind of our thank you employees fund there, as well as employee outings. So we do a annual offsite with the leadership team, and we've also included some end of the season for food and beverage, and we do end of verification for golf course maintenance and things like that. Other than that, we added a recruiting line this year. The days of free job posting is over. We have had to pay for recruiting and posting of jobs this year more than ever before, and I do not see that trend going away. So that is my budget in a nutshell. Do you have any questions? Go Scorpions.
Go ahead. Who's talking?
I just said go Scorpions.
Lori, I got to thank you for that presentation.
Of course.
Am I missing something? What's going on? Okay. Thank you for that presentation. That's all good. I just want to really thank you for the work that you've done, especially on this safety record. This is a big deal. Really, really is. I know going home with all your fingers and toes is very important to everybody, but this is really a big deal. So I wanted to thank you very much for the work that you've been doing on that. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and it's kind of a victory lap, I think, for what you've been doing. We had an expectation of much higher health care costs this year earlier on. Remember when we talked about that back in July or so? And that has changed dramatically now in the budget. And I just wanted to have you speak to that for a second, because I know it came from the work that you've done, probably Walter as well, but it's a big deal. And I really do appreciate all of that work to get us to where we are. But do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So our broker has been with us since I've been on board in 2017, 2018. It's going on 5 years. I asked her when we started the budgeting process, what do you think in here? And she said, oh, COVID costs are going to hit us hard this year. We're looking at a 10 to 12% increase. I said, okay, what can we do to mitigate this? So of course, it's always like, do we change plans? Do we look at other carriers? She went back to our carrier. The carrier reviewed our loss run, which is basically how much money our employees spent on things beyond wellness and health and general health care. And our employees' utilization was not real high. We didn't have we didn't have any catastrophic cases of COVID. We didn't lose any employees through death, and other HOAs did. So I'm very proud of that record. And we didn't have a lot of spread of it here. And so she said, your loss run is really normal. So they were able to reduce our renewal to 6.35, which is amazing. Last year we had a 0.5 increase in premium. We did juggle the plan a little bit. And the previous years we've really been able to keep those costs stable. So it's important to our employees to have medical benefits, dental benefits, vision benefits, and we try to keep them affordable for everyone. Thank you, Dan, for all the kudos.
No problem. Hey, the healthcare thing is a big deal, certainly for the HOA, but it's also a big deal for the employees.
It sure is.
I mean, they share in the cost of their healthcare, and when it goes up, and we feel it as an HOA, but they feel it personally as well. So, good job.
Thanks,
That's
sir.
big deal.
I have one question, Lori. On your return on investment, the cost saves of $52,000 or so, over what time period was that?
On the return on investment, that is just this year.
Just this year.
Year to date, and I probably did this through, I don't know if it's got a date on there, but I prepped these for the budget meeting last
Okay, that's
Friday.
fine. No, but
So probably through
basically
Friday.
year to date.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Not a full year yet.
Okay, I do want to announce, excuse me, I'm sorry, sir, please go ahead. Your name, unit, and lot number. Thank you.
My name is Mike Frizzell. I'm in Unit 33, Block 48. My question is, as a businessman, congratulations on your savings on workers' comp. I know how hard that is to do, having experienced it for 40 years. My question is, and I would hope that Arizona uses the same means of monitoring, what is your experience modifier?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. It was in my slide deck.
I think it's on the last page, Lori.
Yeah, it was, I inherited, we started out with we rode Robeson's coattails the first year. So we got their 0.9 modifier. And based on our track record, when we went for renewal, it jumped up to 1.47. And then it jumped to 1.64. And then it went to 1.58. And then it went to 1.38. And now it's 0.95.
That's very good. That's very good.
The way this works, you know how this works, right?
I know how it works.
The way this works is they take the previous 3 years and not including this year. So it's our record from 2020, 2021, 2020, and 2019 that will give us our premiums for this coming year in 2023. So all the great work we did in 2018 didn't matter because our experience mod followed us and then kept increasing until we could show year-over-year improvement.
Thank you.
So it's a long haul.
For those that might not understand, you start at 100%. They take like businesses, and 100% is what your work comp is. If you don't have claims and you have a safe environment, it goes down. I got mine down to 75 once, but it started at 150. And so if you're not a safe environment, it goes up. So instead of at 100% that you should be paying, it continues, and you were pretty high. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, the whole team worked on this, and it was an educational effort, and of course incentives, right? That's why we have those employee gifts in there, so thanks.
Just one other thing. As Lori mentioned, she has been with us since the fall of 2017, at which time we were starting to prepare for a transition from Robeson at January 1 of 18. Prior to transition, our HR services were handled at a fee through staff up at RCI's headquarters. Lori took this position, and she has made it what it is today, bringing Paylocity on, doing all the work that she has done, having a haven for staff to feel like they have a place they can go get questions answered, or if they have concerns of any time. Unfortunately, Lori just gave her 2-week resignation last Friday. So what I'd like to do is just thank you, Lori. You've been such a valuable employee to us over all these years, and I wish you success in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Therese. I appreciate it.
Okay, that takes us through the operating budget presentations that we did not get to hear on Friday of last week. The next item on the agenda is our common areas maintenance teams level 5 funding. And, well, Walter will take us through this. And our Director of Common Area Maintenance, Anthony Griego, will join him.
All right. Am I running the slideshow, or are you, Joey? Am I doing it? Okay, good morning. I'm Walter Yazzie, the General Manager. I'm going to start out with these slides, but actually Anthony's the author of these slides, so he's the one that put this stuff together. Before I get going, though, I do have to publicly say thanks to Lori. She's been great here. She's taken on a lot of work. She's handled, some really big issues and got us through transition, COVID, and many other things that she's done. So, hate to see her go, but I'm happy that she can find more challenges and other people to help. So, thanks, Lori. All right, Anthony. Let me see if I can run this thing. All right. Just wanted to let the board, I wanted to brief the board basically on what we see level 5 as being and the cost that it would take Anthony and his crew to maintain level 5. And we'll present a couple different options as we go through this. All right, so first is, what is level 5? Several years ago, we took a map of all of Saddlebrook and we divided up the different geographical areas in between different levels. And level 5 is the area, well, let's start at the house. If you look, you have the residence, the house, you have the backyard up to their back wall. And we defined level 4, which is 8 feet past that back wall, as level 4. And most of you are familiar with that. That's a yearly cycle that Anthony and his team goes and cleans up. Now, level 5 begins after that 8 feet, and it goes out for another 30 feet, typically. And if you look at the map, there's some areas where it goes out a little bit farther because, there's some areas that just make sense to take it a little bit farther down to the golf course path or something like that. But anyway, level 5 starts 8 feet after the wall and continues typically for another 30 feet. So how big of a job is this? This is quite a big job. It's when you calculate all the level 5 areas we have, it's 268 acres. And so, how much is that? Well, that's about 203 football fields worth of area to clean. And it's not just all flat like a football field. It's rugged. It's not easy to get to in some areas. And so it's a lot of work to get in there. All right, so from the policy, which you can also find on the website, I just took some of the highlights. There's a little bit more to it, but these are the highlights of the policy. Well, why do we care about maintaining level 5? It's a safety. For the safety, sustainability is also an interesting thing because we really don't like to touch nature and bother nature. But in some of these areas, we've got to do a little bit of work to keep it so it doesn't get too much like a, overgrown like a jungle. So we need to address that issue there. So it's a sustainability and the appearance. Again, the appearance, when you look over your back wall, you want to see something that's, somewhat nice. It's not going to be, totally cleaned up, but it's going to be somewhat nice. And again, back to the sustainability. Anthony has the qualifications to, and Anthony has brought an idea here to Saddlebrook, which was a little bit different when I first got here, but Anthony's idea is to let things grow naturally. And, you're not going to have like Edward Scissorhands come in and, shaping all your trees and stuff like that. He's going to just trim them up naturally and let them grow naturally. So it's just a little bit different approach than we had maybe 8 years ago. All right, so every year we would go and inspect the area for, dead plants, cactus trees, trash. He would evaluate the area. He would remove the trash and debris out of the area. And then the trees, cactus, shrubs, and brushes, key word here, selectively remove dead and damaged and all diseased vegetation. So again, this isn't just because you look over the wall and want it gone. This is because Anthony and his team goes and they analyze it. They say, okay, yeah, that's dead, and or it's diseased and it does need to be removed. Prune is necessary. Again, trimming and pruning trees isn't, all the way up to the top. It's basically trimming it up from the ground, just up enough to get it up off the ground and have it look a little bit natural. We can't go all the way to the top of all the trees. It's pretty high. Now there is stuff that Anthony and team will leave in the area. The grass that he cuts can be left in the area it'll biodegrade. Also, we have chippers. And so there's areas that he can chip in. He can throw that chipping back into the natural area again for it to replenish the nutrients. Also, it's a stability practice for some of the areas that have a lot of water erosion. So there's times when Anthony will chip and leave things in the area. And then semi-annually, spot spray, inspect all erosion control measures, and if necessary, replace some of the erosion control devices that he has in the area. So, what's that?
Yeah, we actually go into the area and we treat for buffalo grass as well, either mechanically or chemically.
So they will look for those invasive type grasses and try to make those priority to keep those from getting out of hand. There's no way to totally eradicate that, but try to control it to some degree. Okay, so the board asked us to go out and pick a few houses and do a demonstration of what this level 5 maintenance would look like. So Anthony picked a couple houses that have a back fence, goes down to level 5 area, and then it butts up against the golf course. So that's one example. And then he also did another example where he went to a house that gets into the level 5, and then it butts up to another house across the drainage area. So those are the two examples that he used, one that butts up to the golf course and one that just butts up to another house a little bit farther across the drainage way. So as I show you this, Anthony and team went and did these examples. This is right after he got done, so it's looking pretty clean. I got to say that I think they might have over cleaned it a little bit, but these are the pictures we got. So here is an example on Oakwood, and this is between two different houses. And so you can see the before and after picture. Just getting rid of the grasses and trimming the trees up a little bit. You'll also notice that, he doesn't necessarily remove, like the cactuses that are here. He doesn't necessarily remove those. It's not dead or diseased or whatever. It's outside of the 4-foot area or level 4 area. So there are things that will be left. It's not going to be scalped all the way down to the ground. This is unit 48. Yes. So this is an example between houses and what the level 5 will look like. Again, his team went and did a real good job here. I'm saying that, as we get into this, it may not be quite as clean, but That's what they did here. Okay, so now this is a house up in the preserve that backs up against a golf course. So they went there, again, trimming up the trees a little bit and getting rid of some of the grasses, but leaving the different bushes and, natural area. You don't want to clean this too much because you have to leave the roots, you have to leave the vegetation to maintain or control the erosion. And then another example, also a house up in the preserve that butts up against the golf course. So another example there. Okay, so the question is, what is the cost to do this? So here's where we get into several options. So we were talking, and one of the options was, okay, well, let's just go and get it done next year. Let's just hire some contractor, have them come through all 268 acres and clean it. And what we did is we went out, we got a couple bids, and the bids came in around $1.2 million. Now, this is not just this year. We've done this same drill several years ago when we were first developing this program, and those costs were still about the same. They were in the $1 million range to come through and bring all of these acres down to the level 5 requirement. So that's $1 million to have them come through and just get it to where we need it. Now this over to the right would be an example of the year after they come through and clean everything. Then to the right would be what Anthony and his crew would need to maintain this. So, but the cost over here is, the initial, this $78,000 would be the initial startup cost of equipment that he needs to stand up his crew. And then you would have your reoccurring cost down here. The $178,000 would be the reoccurring cost for him to have a 4-man crew and maintain their equipment. So that would be a follow-on year, and that would be about $266,000 to get that going the next year. So that's one option. So you pour the $1 million in, and then you follow up the next year with $266,000. Another option is what we call the 5-year cycle option. And what you do here is pretty much like you did in the last slide. You stand up the team with their equipment, $78,000. And again, the same 4-man crew with pieces of equipment and maintenance, that's $178,000. And so then that's $266,000. If you invest that in 2023, that will give Anthony a 4-man crew, but it will take basically a 5-year cycle for him to get through and clean all of these areas up and then start over again. But you can imagine, some of those areas will be sitting for about 5 years before we get back to them. There is another option. This is expandable. You can fund 2 crews. Now, if you fund 2 crews, which would be 8 people and their equipment, if you fund the 2 crews, you actually get a little bit more. We think we're going to be able to get a little bit more efficiency out of 2 crews, and so that would probably knock it down to a 2 or 3 year cycle of cleaning all of the level 5 area. So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, now let me show you just real quick. Well, why the 5-year cycle? Let me just go to this real quick. So why the 5-year cycle? So when Anthony did these items, we tracked how many hours it took him to clean behind a house. And on general, it took him about 20 man-hours to clean behind one house. And that's starting from scratch, it's from 0, and getting it down to level 5. So we may gain efficiencies each year we do this, but starting from scratch, it was about 20 man-hours behind a house. And behind the house is, 0.13 acres. We've got 268 acres. So you take that, multiply it by the man-hours, you end up with 41,000 man-hours. And in a year, a person works about 22,080 hours. Anyway, the math all shakes out for a 4-man crew to clean the 268 acres. It would take them 5 years for one cycle. So that's how those calculations came out. Okay, we're ready for questions.
So I guess this is a question for Anthony. So Anthony, if we do the 1 million and clean it all up, I guess my expectation or assumption would be that then to maintain it, it would be less than 20 man-hours per house because you're not cleaning, of course, that gigantic wildlife area. Now you're just maintaining it. Can you talk to, for instance, if you think the 20 man-hours per lot would go down if we cleaned it up initially, so that maybe we could do a 2-year cycle instead of a 5-year once it's cleaned up the first time?
Well, everybody needs to understand that every year that you add on to get back to that one house is going to increase those man-hours back to the 20 man-hours to get it back to where it was. So for each year we can knock off of that and get back to that house. Yes, it's going to subsequently knock down the amount of man-hours it's going to take to maintain it. And if we do it, say, for instance, a 2-year cycle, we're probably looking at maybe 8 man-hours to get the one house done. So, but again, it depends on the weather we get, monsoon activities, but the amount of buffalo grass or noxious plant material that we need to manage in those areas. So it's real critical that we try and take into account all aspects of what we do in the level 5, because the buffalo grass management or noxious plant material management is a different crew, different ways that we address that. So that would not, hopefully if we can keep on top of our buffalo grass management with our chemical applications and outsourcing some of that work, we won't have a lot of the buffalo grass that we'd have to take care of with this crew, which will kind of, expedite the amount of work they can get done. So,
Anthony?
Yes.
Looking at your $78,000 estimate for equipment, how long does the equipment last, specifically the large numbers, the $50,000 Kubota carts and the $18,000 chipper?
Well, we figure if we take all the, if we do the PMs when we're supposed to, which we do with our current equipment, those Kubota carts should last 10 years or more. I mean, they're diesel engines. The ones we get are diesel, so they're a little more durable than the gas ones. So, so as long as we, maintain them and take care of things as they break down and watch how we're using them, they should last, at least I would think 10 years. The chipper may last like 15 years or more. If we make sure that we take it in for all the PM service that is required for the man hours that it has.
Okay, so after the initial $78,000 investment, it really,
yeah, and then
the annual operating cost would really fall to the 187.
I'm sorry?
After you make the investment, the $78,000 of equipment, and then the rest, the $187,000 of operating costs, that's really what would go forward once you buy the equipment. Year 2, let's say, would just be the $187,000, because you don't have to buy equipment every year.
Yeah, because we're still going to have to replace some of the equipment every year because it's just not designed to last very long. Like, for instance, the blowers, the pole saws that we need, the power pole saws. If they're getting used every day, they're not going to last more than a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
So those are going to be constantly having to be replaced.
But the big ticket items, the chipper and the Kubota.
The chipper and the Kubota, yeah, they should last for multiple years, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony,
yes.
Good job, buddy. I appreciate you picking my house to do the before and after.
Oh, is that your house?
Just kidding.
I didn't know.
Just kidding.
I thought it was one of the previous
Hey,
board members.
I wanted to ask you about level 4. All of this discussion is level 5. This does not detract from the fact that still we're doing a once a year level 4 going forward. This is not at the expense of level 4, correct?
Absolutely not. Level 4 is actually a different crew. and they're going to work at a different speed than the level 5 would. So that's why it's kind of, it would be challenging to try and incorporate those two crews to work together and going at the same pace, because some of these areas are pretty big, as you know, going 300 feet or more. So it's going to take us quite a while for the level 5 crew to get through those. The level 4 guys are going to be already probably in the next unit. So.
The other question I had for you is, would you prioritize homes for level 5, homes on the golf courses, before you would move into other areas, or are you kind of an equal opportunity guy and you'd be doing everything?
How much?
I don't live on a golf course.
Okay.
I can't afford that, I'm sorry, but I'm just curious.
No, actually, I try to treat everybody here at Saddlebrook, regardless of where you live, with the same respect that I do, regardless of if you're on a golf course lot or not. I mean, you all pay dues to live here, and so I make sure that everybody gets the same attention, or I don't pay more attention to this lot over here as opposed to this lot, or because I don't like this person, or that person gives me money. So, I mean, none of you give me money. I just want to make that clear. I was just kidding about that. But no, I've made it a point to make sure that everybody's treated the same here.
Yes, you'll be able to come up to the microphone to ask questions. Anthony, I have a question for you, and I know this is just a question right now because later today in this meeting we're going to be talking about funding considerations for the entire budget. But if we were to start with your one crew this year in 2023 and do 1/5 of the area, and well, actually, okay, and then in 2024, I'm just looking at the million plus. I mean, that's like $404 per household additional to anything else, which would have to be, in my opinion, through that one-time cost through a special assessment. I mean, there wouldn't be any other way. But if we started this year with your 2023 with your crew, and then hired somebody to come in, and then next year your crew would do this the next 5th, then we could still have a crew come in and possibly for less money do the other 3/5. Would that work for you?
Well, doing it like that, you're by the time they get back to that first 5th, you know, if we're doing the second 5th and we bring a separate crew in to do the other 3/5, by the time they get done with those 3/5, this one that we started on,
right,
you're probably going to need attention again.
Yeah, but then you would start every year on your 5-year cycle.
Yeah, so it might help a little bit as far as the funds it would take to outsource some of this, but maybe 200,000 less, just the ballpark.
Okay.
I'm not sure if, you know, it's just the amount of times and Mother Nature it's really an unsure factor here. So if we continue to get the monsoon rains like we had, the amount of growth that we're going to get in these areas is going to be pretty dense. And it might even end up costing us more in the long run if we delay this very much longer, because this plant material isn't static that's out there in these levels. They're constantly growing, and it constantly takes more effort to get it back under control. So.
The question, Anthony, did you give any consideration to the mechanical approach?
I have. There is some areas where if it could be feasible. I'm just still not sure as far as the amount of money we're looking at for that type of equipment if we're going to really get the most out of it. I feel that there's other pieces of equipment out there that could be more beneficial in helping us speed up these cycles. But the important thing that we need to keep in mind here is that if we start taking too much plant material, native grasses out of a lot of these areas, Mother Nature is going to say, okay, well, here you go, buffalo grass and fountain grass. You got some plain areas for you to go take hold, and then it's going to end up costing us more money. So we need to really be careful with what we do in these areas. We don't want to remove too much where we're going to start creating a lot of erosion issues that are out there, because that's all that's holding this dirt in place is the grasses that are out there and a lot of the trees. So we need to, use caution as far as how we thin out some of these areas and what type of equipment that we use to do it. Sometimes it's just best to just have somebody out there with a chainsaw and some loppers and pruners and do a lot of the work by hand.
Thank you. Although there will be a tour, a couple of the board members will be going out with Anthony and Walter to view what the terrain really looks like, what the majority of the terrain looks like, and how much could mechanization help versus using other equipment. And that'll happen at the end of the month, I think you said, Mark, right? And so by the time we get to the town hall or whatever, those initial costs may go up, may go down. No, they won't go down, but may go up. But if it proves to be a cost-effective way to move forward. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. We have people who have questions.
My name's Ron Kerr, Unit 33, Lot 43. I know I've never seen this request before, but can I come up on the stage 1 second? Come right up on the stage for 1 second. I want to prove it. Okay, all right. Well, all right. From where you're sitting, could the people from my unit raise their hand right over here? From where you are, we're this close to the golf course, 30 feet. What my proposal is this. I'm listening to these budgets, and I know a lot of people that are here have all owned homes prior to being here and have all done work in their yards. Our slope on those pictures is just like you're looking at right here, but put 5 foot of weeds up in front of you. I thought I could talk loud enough. I don't usually use a microphone. But anyway, 5 feet of weeds. Now, if you put 5 feet up in front of you, looking at the neighbors and friends that I've just pointed to, you can't see them. This is what we look at. We don't have the slope like Anthony had up on here, like this. Our slope is like this to you. Mr. Linegar will testify that. I can have a normal conversation with the people on the green. We paid a lot of money when we bought from Robeson for these lots. We were told they were going to be maintained. 1. We were told at transition by Therese Butler that they were going to be maintained. It hasn't been. We have to waterboard people to come out and clean. The pictures up there look like they were bare. Anthony's crew came out to our house over the wall. It doesn't look like that. The grass is still like this. It's a fire hazard. My proposal is this. I know you're going to say liability, and that's a bunch of crap, because I pulled POA for the golf course for 3 days. POA volunteered. I volunteered for Adopt-A-Hole. No pay, volunteered. I never signed a thing. Liability never came up. Why can't we, if you say liability is an issue, again, neighbors, it would cut down costs considerably. We come up and we sign a waiver that we go over the lawn, not trimming trees, none of the big stuff, but to get rid of the grass and the weeds that block our view that we paid for. It's getting crazy. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dick Schrader, Unit 49, Lot 9. The presentation is very helpful in a looking forward perspective, and that's very important. Are we saying that level 5 has not been maintained at all, looking in the rearview mirror?
There's been a selective few items that we have done in certain areas. We go in there and do a trash patrol when we're working in the area. And I've had the buffalo grass been treated out there by an outside vendor in all the areas. But again, the buffalo grass management is just an ongoing issue that we're going to have to.
So the last part of my curiosity is residents will be going from paying out of our dues, paying very little, relatively speaking, for maintenance of level 5 to the level that you're proposing, which is a significant increase. Is that right?
You want to answer that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then regardless of which proposal the board chooses, my recommendation is a pretty clear marketing plan to the residents to make sure everybody understands.
That's true.
Hi, my name is Sandy Williamson. I'm Unit 33, Lot 47. First question is, are washes between houses the same as, are they level 5 or level 4?
Yes, there are washes. Yeah, I guess it depends, but there are a lot of washes that are in level 5 areas. Okay. Between houses. Is that what you're? Yes, actually, we've gone in there recently in some of the level 5 areas between the houses and did some thinning of some of the trees that were there that were really dense. So just to kind of help the remaining trees to mature properly. So, yeah.
So to really know what level the wash is, we would have to refer to the map that we developed, because there are some different washes that are other than level 5.
I couldn't read that wash up there, but I know our wash is a drainage wash, and that does make a difference. But I want to say I've worked with Anthony. I'm on a wash, and I'm on the golf course. And we moved here, like many of you, because of the beauty of the area, number one. Number two, because of the amenities. And we've been here 20 years, and how blessed we've been from the amenities that we now have compared to what we had 20 years ago. But the third reason that was different when we visited communities all over the United States was the volunteer ethic. And because I've been a big volunteer, that has appealed to me, and so we chose Saddlebrook. Many of you are volunteers, and we thank you for that. Many of the people out here are volunteers in different ways. You just heard a gentleman talk about the golf course volunteers. You have goose volunteers. You have church volunteers. You have senior village volunteers. People here are very, very willing to volunteer to help you with the expense of things. I would really need you to look at not fining people for trying to make their properties more desirable. Our property right now, I said the first reason we moved here was because of the beauty of the area. We have a bench on our wall. I cannot sit on that bench because if I have my face forward, the weeds are 5 feet tall. My hair will be full of weeds from the 8-foot clearance that you are supposed to be clearing. If I go the other way and sit sideways and look out towards the golf course, I'll get weeds in my mouth, and I cannot see the golf course. I live on a wash. Plenty of, this year you talked about monsoon. This year we had a heck of a monsoon. Last year we didn't have much of a monsoon. In the 20 years that we've been here, the last decade, unless I call or fill out the form, then we get the wash cleaned. And I have to say, Anthony is very quick since he's been here about cleaning that wash. We hear maybe back within 2 weeks, and the wash is clean. It has not been cleaned since last spring when I called. If you wait 5 years, it will be a forest. It already is a forest. At 11:15 today, the Golden Ranch Fire Department is coming out to assess the fire hazard in our community. You haven't talked about that at all. If you wait 5 years to clean these things, most of us, like most of you, have spent a significant amount of our income to live in our homes. But now, after our fire that we saw 2 years ago, we have a fire, a significant fire concern. On hole 6, if a lightning struck at the beginning of that hole to the north of the the tee box, it would just move right down our community.
Okay,
you have
thank
been
you.
invited by our
Ma'am,
people
we
on your-
usually hold discussions to 2 minutes, and I'm sorry I didn't
Okay.
mention it. So if you could just finish it.
I'll finish it up. You have been invited to come out and look at our property, all of you by a member from our village. That hasn't happened. We are inviting you at 11:15 to come out today and meet with the
Thank you for the
fire people who will assess
invitation,
it.
but this meeting is probably going to go to 12:30.
Well, then we'll let you know what happens because
Thank you.
We're going to be there. But thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Some of your people are really good when they come out, and I call you and compliment you about that. Some of them, not so good, but such is life. But
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Duff Fletcher, Unit 1537. There are two issues that I've heard people complain about, and right now we seem to be focused on level 5. I am also hearing complaints about level 4, and the problem is once a year, whether it looks good behind your house depends upon the time of year it is done. If somebody gets their weeds cut right now, it's going to look good until springtime. If somebody gets their weeds cut in March, they're going to grow right back up in April and May, and they will live with them for the year. And the board's going to have to look very seriously at the priorities of what's more important to the community as a whole. I have no oar in this thing. I back up to a wash. I've got a 5-foot wall. It's a very short, steep wash, so I have no problems regardless of what is done. But I think the board is going to have to take a long look at the priorities and exactly what they're going to do.
Thank you, Duff. We actually still have to talk about level 4. Right now, we're only talking about level 5. There'll be a little more conversation on level 4 in just a couple minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Maureen Borland from Unit 29, Lot 12, and I was the chair of the Common Area Task Force. I have several concerns. Level 5 that's been allowed to grow up in these areas, particularly between houses and right after the golf course, since before we transitioned. So we're going to be in January, it'll be 5 years, correct? And really, virtually nothing has been done. We went through in the Common Area Task Force making recommendations for some money that we found to be allocated several times with Damon, and we never saw any results from that, and it was supposed to be to help with level 5. So I have some concerns about just allocating money and then staff are going to do this, because I don't think we have the staff to do it. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think that the best approach would be to take a one-shot, clean this place up, which hasn't been touched in over 5 years, and get it done, and then it can be maintained by staff. I do not believe that we're going to be able to do the other things that need to be done in levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 if we don't do that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kerr from Unit 33. We are in the same situation as Mrs. Williamson mentioned and several others that are here. I know this is beating the dead horse, so I'm not going to reiterate what they said, but we are really, really upset with the way it looks behind our property. Maybe budget-wise, they ought to consider what level 5 encompasses. There may be areas in level 5 that don't affect a particular home or set of homes. Maybe the natural environment in there is just fine and the growth is okay. You know, with the maybe input from what's around there, the homes, leave it alone and prioritize what is visible from the street, visible from the golf course, visible from other areas, and cut back in the way you're trimming out some of this. Case in point, on Clubhouse, as you go down on the left side exiting the community, last year, not that long ago, it was completely cleaned out from underbrush. It looked great. Go look at it today. It's back. That's less than a year. We've had monsoon. Does anybody complain about that? I mean, maybe they do. I don't know this, but maybe those villas along there don't like seeing all that. Maybe they don't care. I didn't care looking at those weeds. I mean, that's where deer lived, the trees and so forth. But I care what's behind my house. I care a lot. And we are going to maintain that somehow, because I'm not going to live with 5 feet of weeds over my wall.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Okay. I would just like to say that we have added level 5 costs into the operating budget as it looks like today, as you saw today in those numbers. And they, you know, and we're, once again, as we get closer to funding the entire budget, we'll go through the process of how we would fund some of these things. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about level 4 work. As is mentioned, just a little history for people who maybe haven't been here forever. Back prior to transition, the level 4 effort was, when it was done by HOA crews, they tried to get back there twice a year. And that took care of some of the types of comments that Duff was talking about. If you get back there twice a year, it takes care of stuff. However, but the homes behind the golf course, if the golf crew was taking care of it by Robeson, they only came through once a year. And after transition, somehow or another, I'm not sure I was still on the board at that time. Maybe I was, and I just don't know. The golf crews, maintenance crews, stopped doing any maintenance in that level 4 area. And in fact, prior to that even, if you wanted some work done and you lived on a golf course, and it was past that area, there was usually money exchanging hands between a homeowner and the person and the golf crew to do a little extra work. And we tried very hard to stop that, which was an illegal practice. That being said, and in addition to that, one of the other areas that CAM had to take over after transition, only to find out because prior transition, this was never on our radar because it was not brought up to us by RCI, was we have a series of drainage ditches, we have culverts, we have all over this community. And what we suddenly were realizing, it wasn't as bad some years when you had drought, but if you don't have drought and you've got rain coming, those culverts and those drainage washes fill with silt incredibly. So now CAM also has to take care of that area. So, which is another reason why they're only able to get back behind homes once a year. We have out for comment right now, both looking at the fines for doing work behind homes as well as your own property if you aren't taking care of it. And we did get comments this last week, quite a few, complaining that we need to figure out a better way to take care of these things. I had asked Terry, our finance director, to query our insurance broker this last week to find out what, if at all, our insurance premiums would happen if we allowed people to do level 4 work behind their homes by signing a waiver, et cetera, having common area explain what they could do or could not do. And that came back on a rather positive note. He had still said he would want our legal counsel to be the ones crafting such a document, and then probably we would have, I don't know, because we haven't done it before, but probably some kind of, you have to sign the document, you have to attest to this is the work that would be done. Probably never any spraying. I wouldn't think. We want to leave that up to Anthony and his crew, because really you need to be certified by the state to do that type of spraying. And so I mentioned to the rest of the board when I got that back from our Bob Rice, our insurance broker, and said I wanted to bring it up today at this meeting. My understanding is that HOA 1 has a process that they use for work, behind their homes. And so what I'm trying to find out is whether we should consider this, take the next month prior to when we fund the budget to study it and figure out if there's a way that we can get the level 4 work done if people wanted by homeowners, which would then help, of course, Anthony to get through and do some of the other stuff that needs to be done. So I'd like to hear from the rest of the board whether this is something that we should pursue.
So, yeah, I think it's certainly something we should pursue. I think my only question on it, which would be for Anthony, is that if you've got 3,200 homes, and if 15% of the people are willing to do that, then you've got 500 lots that'll be cleared. That means Anthony's going to have to keep track of the other, 2,600 lots that he still has to go do, and how much of a complexity that would be for him to organize his work is my only concern, is you've got 2 homes that have it, then you got 7 homes next to it that don't have it, then you got another home that does it, then you got 3 more homes that don't do it. He's going to be jumping all around, and that's an efficiency issue. I guess that would be my only question, because I'm sure that although there certainly are owners, including the ones here, that are willing to do it, I suspect we have a lot of owners that are going to say, I have no interest at all in going back there and doing any work at all. I'm either too frail or just not interested and too busy, whatever. And so that would be, I think, the only question. It's for Anthony, is how could we organize it so that it could be efficient? That'd be my only question.
My simple answer is it's fine. I don't think what Mark is saying, you can look at the lots and see which ones are maintained and which ones are not. It's just a simple observation. So I have no problem with that. As long as the waivers are signed.
Comments from any other board members? Chuck's giving us a thumbs up. Thank you.
Okay. I'm kind of good with it. I think we got to get on with something. I'm not worried about Anthony's worrying about this or that lot. They can just walk through the ones that somebody's actually taken care of. The only concern I've always had is that there's a lot of landscape out there that is dangerous. It really is on a slope. There's a lot of stuff, cactuses and all kinds of stuff. And I was always concerned that 8 foot becomes 28 feet. You know, when do you stop and what's going on and all that policing. But having said all that, I really think we need to try something. So I'm good with if the insurance guys say we don't have a problem, Anthony can figure out a way that people can know what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do. I'm good with trying something and seeing how it works. So.
Yeah, I personally don't have a problem with it. The only question is the 8-foot section addresses a portion of what people have talked about today, but doesn't address the level 5. The two are going to have to be done in conjunction in my mind so that we get a finished appearance to it and not a haphazard do 8 feet and we don't do the next 20. So I think it's really from the wall to all the way out is the decision we'll have to try to walk through because the 8-foot section, if you're worried about fire load or something like that, it's 8 feet of 40 feet. So it reduces it some, but it doesn't eliminate it. So I just think the issue is level 4 and 5 combined together, a single plan to deal with both.
Thank you. Art?
Yes. I'm Art Kopsak, Lot 26, Unit 29. I had two things to address on this. You had mentioned about the swales filling up. The question is, under the Common Area Task Force, we put the swales and other drainage facilities in level 2 with a specific time to clean them. Swales to be cleaned within 30 days prior to monsoon and within 30 days after monsoon. The swales have not been cleaned now in 3 years. So the question is, what's happened there? That's the primary thing I have on that.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Hi, Maureen Borland, Unit 29, Lot 12. I just wanted to remind people that I don't have a problem with flexibility, and I think you need to work with Anthony on that. But we did buy a machine specifically to be able to do behind the walls for the 8 feet. And they came through actually in our unit a couple weeks ago and just ran the machine down past everybody's house, and it took less than a day. So I would like to say that I think it's going to be harder to do one house versus another house if they can use that machine to just run down an entire length. So we may be creating more problems. That's all I'm saying.
Just, again, Art, just one clarification on that. We did acknowledge in the Common Area Task Force that in some cases, a time would have to be spent cleaning out large debris, boulders, and tree stumps, etc., that within that 8 feet, which the bin track would have to go through. That just is a clarification.
Me again. We are in that situation where I think we transitioned from 4 to 5. 4 might be 8 or 12 feet, whatever, 8 now, I guess, and the rest would be 5 down to the golf course. How many of you have a golf cart? Just a question. Can I ask that? A golf cart. Okay. I invite you to get on your golf cart and come to hole number 6. And as you're driving up toward the green, look on both sides. When you look on one side, the south side, you're going to see a very nice setting. It's going to have highlighted cacti. It's going to have the ground cleared. We've been there for 18 years, haven't seen any sign of erosion. It's going to look good. Then look to your left on the north side and see the mess. I think when you look at that, you will decide to maybe think about that 4 or 5 buffer that was just mentioned and maybe put them together as some of the homes that are right there could actually get out and clean that area and make it look good. Go to HOA 1 and look at some of their over the wall. And I know, Teresa, you said you talked to them. I'm not sure. Did you ask them what their policy was?
No, I said we know they do it, and if the board was willing to start and pursue it, then we'll go talk to them and figure out what they're doing and see if their policy makes sense for us.
Before we took over, Robeson actually allowed us to go over there. I know you say they didn't, but I had Tom coming and standing there saying, I'm glad that somebody cares what it looks like. I can quote you. So I made a nice little path. I cleared it out. Ron and I did, not just me, and we planted some nice plants. It looks like hell now because we can't go over there.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I mean. We're going to try and address some of this. We really are.
Can I ask, Walter, can you do me a favor? Can you just remind us about the permitting process that is available for level 5? Don't we have a permitting process now?
There's what we call a special work request, and this is for you to get additional work, like after Anthony comes through on level 4. If you want work in level 5, you can go online and you can fill out the application. It comes, Anthony will come out, look, and you can use an approved contractor to do that. After it's approved, after Anthony and his team approve it, the work can be done, and then I think Anthony does a final inspection just to make sure that you didn't do above and beyond what was approved.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to keep moving forward if we could, please. The next item that is one of the new items to be added to the agenda is to approve Bobby Freer as co-chair of the ALC. As I mentioned at, I think, our last working meeting, Vicki Yeller, who was the co-chair, has recently resigned, and so Bobby Freer is willing to take on that role. So may I have a motion, please, Dan?
So moved. Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion among the board? Any discussion among our members? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The next item I'd like to mention also that isn't on the agenda was to announce that a unanimous written consent to delete one sentence from the ALC guidelines has been taken by the board. If you recall, at our last working meeting, the board approved the changes that had gone out through 30-day comment, and some things were taken back out, etc. Inadvertently, as far as the board members were concerned. One sentence that was added we really didn't want there. That sentence has to do about appeals. The sentence that we're asking to have removed is the one that says appeals to the ALC are final. The board feels that appeals should be able to go all the way up to the board if that's what a homeowner wants, so that's what we've agreed to. The next item on the agenda is the Golf Committee Charter. We were looking to revise the Golf Committee Charter based upon having Club Life on board to help manage our operations. There's been several iterations of this charter that's been out there. Some of the strong feelings by board members are, should this charter and the golf committee report just to Club Life, or should it be a committee of the board and have that representation? And this is going back and forth several times, and we don't, not everybody necessarily agrees with the approach, which is just fine, but I would like to make a motion to approve the Golf Committee Charter that is included in your packet. This took two different members' versions, and it's And what I've tried to do was take it, and board members got this a couple weeks ago, I tried to take what was most relevant in both of them and put it in one document. However, in this one, it has the committee serving as an advisory capacity to the board and to Club Life Management, both, and not just to Club Life. And so we will need a motion to either approve this or not, and then discussion, and then we'll vote.
Second.
Okay, now I'd like to have discussion among the board. Thank you. Okay, no discussion among the board. Any discussion among members in our audience? Please come up and use the microphone.
Again, it's Mike Frizzell, Unit 3348. I guess I don't understand what your proposal is. I personally have dealt with the former Club Corps for years. I was chairman of the board of Indian Wells Country Club, who is managed by Club Corps. I was also in the land company, which had to was the owner of the properties that hired Club Corps for a long lease. And of course, there was benefit that they put in 9 holes of golf for us. But it's very difficult. You need someone that really, and I'm not one, that knows what you're doing with dealing with these people. And I was disappointed, having been gone when this decision was made. The only information I received was via our weekly blast. And there were other groups out there. You need to really, and I'm not speaking badly of Club Corps, because we had a good relationship, but man, we had to keep our eye on everything. They're not in this, they're a business. We're a recreational community, and they're not in it to not make money and have contracts to their benefit. And you need to have a very, very strong committee overseeing that they maintain all of their promises. And I could give you a lot that were broken. And we even had a lawsuit from the land company to Club Corps and the Indian Wells Country Club that went on and was very expensive on both sides. And finally it was resolved. I personally was deposed on both sides because I was on both boards, which is not a good position to be in. But just be very cautious. Make good decisions as to who you have interacting with them. It's going to be very, very important for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there being no other comments among members of the community or in the audience, all those in favor, vote aye. Aye. All those opposed? Show the record that Chuck Kill is opposed to this charter. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to discuss the expenditures of the GIF fund. The GIF fund is something that's been funded since 2019, I think, is when it went into effect, early 2020. And a portion of everybody's golf fees for those who golf went into this golf improvement fund, and to be used for improvements on the golf course. At one of our last board meetings, we voted to discontinue the GIF at the beginning of 2023. However, that did leave a money into the fund upon which needs to be looked at. that committee, the golf committee, came up with some of their recommendations for proposed projects to spend that money. There has been some slight back and forth with the board already. We have a significant golf investment this year of close to $5.7 million, for 2023 to do the major renovation. And so questions among some of the board members, I will say, are, shouldn't we just take all that money and use it for the renovation? Or should we, in fact, try and do some of these individual projects that the committee has recommended? So our first step today is look at what they've recommended and see if there are any of these projects that the board wishes to pursue. So the projected balance at the end of this year for the GIF fund will be $190,000. So that's the amount of money that we're talking about that is out there. The list of items include, and this was the golf committee's prioritization, and which we all have a copy of and received in mid-September. So my first question is, their first priority is to rebuild the Mountain View number 15 green for $85,000. I'd like to see who wants to do that project. Nobody appears to be saying yes, so we'll take that one off. The next one is to expand the bunker on Mountain View number 4 green for a total of $10,000. Would anybody want to do that? Okay, we'll take that one off. The third is the first one relates to the first two, which would be $15,000 for the change orders that would be associated with this on the contract we have for the renovation. It's moot at this point since the first two aren't recommended to be done. The next one on the item is for artificial turf for the Mountain View driving range. This would be, well, if you golf, you know that there are many driving ranges who use artificial turf to tee off of. And this cost would be $20,000. Are there any board members who would like to do that one?
Can I get a clarification real quickly? You skipped over the change order cost. I'm not sure, you've got a value on it, but I don't know that we know a value till the contract's kind of done. Isn't that true? I'm sorry? It's associated to 1 and, oh, I see. It's the cost of implementing 1 and 2. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, I get that one. I don't want that one either. So the artificial turf, let me go to artificial turf. That's part of the overall contract, correct? Well, it is. There's a strip of...
Rebuilding the tees are all part of the contract. None of the tees are artificial turf at this point. They're all natural grass the way we have it now. So that would be an addition. And I guess the next 4 items, which I kind of grouped together, they're the artificial turf for the driving range, which has been recommended by Matt Hudson. And I guess I trust his judgment that if he feels that's the right thing to do. There's the mention of the cart path. Going from number 9 to 10. There's a couple of fountains. I guess my only question before we talk about it is, as I see it, all 4 of those items should be CIF funds. None of them should be GIF. They're all new construction that don't exist. We've got $1.5 million in CIF. Seems to me that that's a much better place to take the money out of for those 4 items, whether we decide to do all 4 or not. And leave GIF for either if we have to have a future change order, and then if we don't end up having any change orders in the contract, we can use it to pay for the contract at the end. I don't know. I guess that's just my thinking. Again, that's a general statement about just all 4 of them. So, but
Okay,
just my opinion.
I do have something to say in regards to that, and in regards to all of these things. When we set up the GIF, and I was not involved at that time, and I was not in favor of it when I learned about it, but we did set it up, And what we've told the homeowners is that decisions regarding the use of these funds will be made collaboratively by the golf committee and the HOA2 golf staff with input collected from the golfing community. And that those funds were to be used for projects identified and prioritized by the collaboration of the golf staff and the golf committee. So those are words. The first part is exactly what has been shown on the rate sheet. That's what we have been promising to the golfers, that this is something that's going to be used for projects that they identify that they want. So I think that that's the best use for these GIF funds. To do something else now is a little bit of a bait and switch and really not fair to what we have told people we were going to do. So in my opinion, we need to evaluate what's here, what they have recommended, and decide whether we want to do it or not. And in my opinion, I don't think that the board should be deciding independently that, oh, you recommended this, we don't want to use it for that at all, we want to use it for something else entirely different. That is not what we had promised to the homeowners. And as far as using the CIF, this is what they recommended, this is what the GIF fund was for, so I would be in favor of using it for some of these items that are identified here.
Okay, I guess we'll have to decide. As a golfer, I would say that as long as we use the GIF for improving the golf experience and the golf courses, then I think most golfers would completely support that, whether it subsidizes the $5.7 million cost for rebuilding the golf courses or whether it goes to some of these items that weren't part of the contract. I guess my opinion would be that most golfers would be supportive of the fact that at least the money is being used for golf, which is really what the commitment was. So I guess my opinion, we obviously have a difference of opinion on that. So
It's okay that we do. What I'd like to do is just continue down the list first. So the artificial driving range, the turf, artificial turf at the driving range, I'd like to know how many are in favor of using it for that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. The Mountain View Cart Path, they are suggesting a 50% share. I would suggest they pay the entire thing, which would be $58,000. And how does everybody else feel? Yes, yes? Okay. Then my next question is on the preserve. They're talking about a center pond fountain. There is no fountain there. And basically Mountain View 16 pond is pretty much the same thing. There isn't a fountain there. So let's take first the preserve center pond. And, oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you. I looked down. And the 16, the pond fountain. Okay. Okay, you guys do the math, please. So we have 78, we had the 190 minus 78,000. Minus 15.5, let's just say. And minus 10.9. So out of the 190,000 anticipated balance, the items that we believe are good to do still leaves a balance of $85,600. So I want to take this now to the next step, and this one, I just want to hear, do we use the rest of this to fund the renovation? Do we keep it on tap for future? I mean, we're probably going to be dealing with change orders and everything else, so I'd like to hear the opinion of how we should use this money.
I'd keep it on tap. I'd keep it on tap.
Yeah, I would agree. I would prefer to keep it on tap and not decide right now.
Yes, I've said my piece, and I would agree with that.
Okay, if we keep it on tap, is it to do things for the renovation if expenses go higher, or what is it for? Okay, so you don't want to decide now. Don, please.
If it's 85,000 and they have a green they want for 85,000, just build it and be done with it. Go on.
Okay, so Donna's recommending maybe we do rebuild that one green, and that would take care of the 85,000, which was actually their first priority. Yeah, then we'd need a portion of the change order, so at least half of that. So which means no.
I would assume that 10 of the 15,000 at least is probably the cost for redesigning the green. So I guess a good guess, without having Mike over here, would be 95,000 for the project. That would be my guess.
Okay, so we'll look at the math. We're definitely going to do the last four, and we're asking to move that to a full share for the golf cart path. And we'll see what is remaining and if it is going to be enough to rebuild the Mountain View Green. Left? Oh.
The 85.6 is what we spent.
Oh, there should be enough to do that. So, are you guys okay with that?
I guess the only question I've got is, I mean, I play both courses, and certainly the green that they're talking about on 15 has got some limited spots where you can put the tees. Preserve has also got that same situation on many of the greens. So I guess that was my feeling as to why I wasn't sure that it was worth spending $100,000 to rebuild that one green. If we have that same logic when we do the Preserve in 4 years, we're going to be rebuilding probably at least 7 or 8 of the greens in the Preserve to have the equivalent of playing condition. I doubt we're going to have the money or the desire to spend that kind of money. So that's why I just thought it was smarter to keep the remaining money for something in the future, as opposed to rebuilding a green that in that course maybe is a little difficult, but I don't know. I guess that's my feeling.
Okay, but once again, these are what the committee was recommending, and the recommendations were supposed to be coming to us from the committee. This golf course is going to be majorly torn up, so I think that's probably why they're heading in this direction. So, may I have a motion that we approve items 1, and if whatever small limits there are to the number 3 that would affect number 1, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, I've been asked, okay, we don't have a motion yet. I've been asked if we can split them. So, give me a motion.
I present a motion to split item 1 away from 4, 5, 6, and 7.
So vote first on items 4, 5, 6, and 7 to fund those. Someone's got to move. Oh, did you move?
I did.
Good, okay. Okay, any further discussion among board members? Okay, no, there being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion on the floor for 4, 5, 6, and 7, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. Okay, so the next item, may I have a motion to approve item number 1 and whatever the possible portion of item number 3 it would take to take care of that one? Do I have a second? Okay. Any further discussion among the board? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as presented? Aye. 1, 2, okay, 4. May the record show that Chuck, Mark, and Campbell were opposed on this one. Thank you. Okay, the next item, and Campbell, this one is yours. It's to go over the golf loan update.
Okay, how do I close this? Oh, yeah.
While they're getting that ready, we're going to take a slight break here for just a couple minutes. Thank you, Dan. It's a very good idea.
And how do I advance it? And how do I advance it? I use the arrows. This is too slow. Okay, got it. Not ready. So is this a touch? You can just touch it or that would be nice? I'm going to do it now. No, it's not a touch screen.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. It's your computer. I'm gonna have to buy a laptop because I've been operating without one the last couple of months. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna. Instead of all these commands, because I like looking at the screen for all the little numbers. And it's like I can't do that on paper anymore. I just gotta bring in a laptop. Okay. Perfect. Now this for level 5. So, that's cool. Yeah, good comments. I didn't spell check my presentation. We'll see. You look at it long enough. I did get a hold of Alliance yesterday. We're still good. We got the green light from the director officer. He gave us the green light. Well, no, I mean, he didn't stop it.
He didn't stop.
He's the guy that could have said, with their process, yeah, he could have just stopped the tracks and Teresa and Bill all feeling. Yeah. Terry's still
Thank you.
Bill.
Okay, I think we can go ahead.
All right. Thanks, everyone. My part of the meeting today is talk about the golf course renovation and the financing opportunities. And the finance... Oh, sorry. How old? Anyway, so my part of this is a presentation on the Mountain View Golf Course renovation. Is it on? Yeah. Yep. There we go. Yeah. Sorry. So the golf course renovation project, I'm going to be talking about the financing opportunities that we have. Just by way of a recap on the project, the Mountain View Golf Course opened in 1997, therefore it's 25 years old. The irrigation system is old, it's inefficient, it's plagued by leaks and other problems. The bunkers are hard, crusty, and in need of proper drainage. Anybody who's played that knows that once you get a rain, the bunkers tend to fill up. The tees are crowned and need to be rebuilt to provide level play. Saddlebrook contracted with Desert Reflections as our contractor for the renovation in the springtime, and the projected cost at that time was about $5.7 million with some cost adjustments. So what I wanted to show to you, this is going to be out of the reserve fund. I want to show sources and uses of reserve funds for next year, not including the renovation. So we're projecting to start the year with about a $4.2 million balance, adding in the dues allocation of about $3.6 million, adding in another CIF allocation of $292,000, gives us what would think could be a pretty good nest egg to pay for the renovation. However, there's net expenditures ex-golf that have been earmarked for next year, HVAC things, other renovations, that's almost $2 million. And then if you take out non-renovation costs associated with golf, that's another $500,000. So you bring all that down, those are sources, those are uses, it puts us at about $5.669 million before renovations. The renovation itself is about the same. So if we don't finance this or a portion of this, what you're going to have is a completely depleted reserve fund. So we're looking at financing opportunities here. I've been in touch with several banking institutions, still am, and we're talking about different types of financing structures. And the three most common structures that we're talking about right now is a non-revolving line of credit, which converts to a term loan at the end of the construction phase. The second one is just taking out the term loan today or when we get approved and take all the money up front and then use it during the construction phase. And then the last one is an interest-only to term loan. It's still a term loan, but you only pay interest on it during the construction phase, and then it translates into a principal and interest loan like your mortgages. I'll go through each one. So the non-revolving line of credit converting to a term loan, as I said, you only use the money as needed during the construction phase. So you start with zero, and as the construction bills mount up, the bank will finance that. And then at the end of the construction, what the balance is will turn into a principal and interest loan for the remainder of the 5 or 6 years, whatever the term is going to be. Now, the primary risk to this is that interest rates are going up. And with interest rates going up, you're not going to lock in your rate till the construction is finished and it converts to a term loan. So that's a year from now, if everything goes well. So who knows what interest rates are going to be a year from now? Probably not what they are today. So that's one of the risks of doing this structure. A term loan is where you can lock it in today or when we get approved, and you can take all the money now, but then you're also paying principal and interest from day one through the life of the loan. So you're taking some costs that you're going to be paying for money you don't really need at the moment. The last structure is interest only. So you take out a term loan, you get the entire, let's say $6 million for the project. You're only paying interest on that during the year of construction. So that's $450,000 versus $1.4 million if it were a term loan, the second one down. But then it converts to a term loan at the end of the construction phase. So we'll go through kind of the impact of those three structures as we go forward. I chose the most conservative example as illustrations. Now, these are just illustrations. Nothing has been finalized. We've not been approved for a loan. We're in process with several different financial institutions. So if we only finance the irrigation part, that's $4 million. I just threw in $5 million, and $6 million is for a nice matrix. If we locked in today before the interest rates go up on November 2nd, we could probably get a loan at 6.75%. If interest rates go up 75 basis points or 3/4 of a percentage point on November 2nd, our loan probably will be at 7.5%. So looking at that in these kind of matrix here, you can see the $119,480 is our monthly payment for the next 5 years at that price, financing the entire amount. If you only want to finance the irrigation, let's say $4 million, that's about $80,000 a month. And there's an impact on that, which I'll get to in a few minutes. The total payments for the entire $6 million loan over the course of 5 years would be $7.2 million. And of that, $1.6 million is going to be interest payments on top of the $6 million, just to kind of keep things simple. Now, I like to boil it down because those are big numbers. They don't mean a lot to people. But when you boil it down to...
Actually, Campbell, can you go back to that prior slide first? I want to give people a little chance to...
Okay, you can look at it. So if you just want to look at the interest payments, not principal, just the interest payments, the cost of borrowing money, if you will, take out the entire $6 million. I used a little mouse here. It's going to cost about $1.16 million in interest over 5 years. That's the cost of borrowing money. And it goes lower, obviously, if you're borrowing less money. But I would say 7.5% is probably where we're going to get money if we can get it before the December monthly increase in rates, which the Federal Reserve is also talking about. So this is the cost to us of getting the money through a financing vehicle.
Campbell, can I ask you a quickie here? Can you ground us in the 675, 750, and 80? You've kind of said, is the 675, if we had a loan today, what we could expect? And you're saying by the time we get figured out, it's going to be 70, is that kind of, or 750?
If we took out the loan today, before the interest rates rise on November 2nd, we could probably get it in the 6.75% range. Now, interest rates are going up. They've gone up 3 percentage points since the springtime. So in the springtime, if things had gone, we could have gotten a much lower rate. So rates are moving, they're moving higher. So money's getting more expensive. Did that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah, so the 750, you're saying, is the kind of expected rate.
Assume if we can close the loan after November 2nd and before, say, the middle of December. Yeah. On a per residence basis, which is numbers everybody can appreciate, again, I kind of focus on the $6 million number at 7.5%. And again, this would be embedded in your dues. It costs about $38 a month to finance the entire renovation projects. Again, embedded in your dues. It's not on top of the dues. On an annual basis, for those who like to see what it's going to cost on an annual basis, it's about $457 per year, embedded in your dues over the 5 years to refinance the whole thing. Now, if you want to look at the entire 5 years, not yearly, not monthly, but over 5 years, you're looking at a cost per residence of $2,286. Again, over 5 years in the dues, not on top of the dues. This is just illustrative purposes of kind of what you would expect to see on a per resident basis. Now, we have options. This is an interesting slide to me because we can take no money and try and finance it without debt, which is why I have monthly zero at zero financing. Annual would be zero, but it would cost about $1,913 in a special assessment. Or if we decided to only take out a portion of the finance, say $4 million for the irrigation, again, the same $25 in the dues, but you'd also have a one-time assessment of $637, which the community would have to vote for. And on down the list. If you finance the entire thing, like I was just put in the previous slides, it would cost you $38 a month, or $38 a month would be would be part of your dues, or $457 annually, but no assessment, no upfront assessment. And again, you're paying over 5 years versus paying everything up front. Now, what is the impact of all this? Joyce put together this really interesting slide to me. 2023, the cash impact of this doesn't really get hit until 2026 based on these financing structures. So if you just took the minimum amount of $4 million, which is the orange line, you're going to see that, okay, we're fine in 2023, 2024. We still have $2 or so million in cash. By the time you get to 2026, we have almost nothing in the reserves. So Then if you go to the gray line, which is kind of the letter of credit getting into a term loan for the entire $6 million, you can see we take the entire $6 million up front, so the cash balance is jumping higher. And then as we pay off the loan, the cash balances fall, but it's certainly a lot more palatable to have something between $2.5 to $3 million in a reserve at the end of 26 versus really nothing. And then starting in 2026, 27, the cash starts to grow because the loan is paid off or almost paid off. So those are kind of the choices we're looking at, the things that we're looking at right now to try and figure out the best ways to get the golf course renovation, financed and paid for. And that's, any questions? No, that's, no.
I'll ask.
So, no, go ahead, Don, I'm sorry.
The question, the 450 that would be required in increased homeowner dues, once the term or once the loan is paid off in 5 years, that remains in the dues and continues to compound going forward?
No, that gets eliminated. You're not paying that anymore. The 450 would no longer be there.
It does not get eliminated. It is, your dues are going to be your dues. A portion of your dues can be considered as covering the loan, but the dues will not go down when the loan is paid off. Yeah, but this slide that shows the one with the lines.
Yep.
That has the dues covering the loan payments, and it's not going to go away at the end of it. So it's not, we didn't figure out the dues and then add $457 to it.
No.
We said, what should the dues be to cover everything? And then they don't go down after that. Does that
The composition would change.
However, by the time, if we took 5 years to pay it off, then we are paying it off in 2028, correct?
Yes. Well.
And when does end
of 27, yeah.
Okay.
Depends on,
depends on which one we took.
Yeah.
But then when is the preserve renovation supposed to start? In 2029. All right, so, yeah. Chances are the dues wouldn't go back down to cover that. I mean, to alleviate that, because you got another golf course to do.
We could refinance the preserve, and then,
The other thing, if I look, we're back on the graph, and I have a question here trying to understand. So scenario 1, the blue line is we take the $6 million sometime after November 2nd, but before the December rise in interest rates again, correct?
If the Fed raises interest rates, yes.
If it's at 7.5.
It's not a set in stone, but that's what they're talking about.
But scenario 3 shows $6 million at 7.5 with line of credit, but that could turn into 8.5, right? Or would we lock in the 7? Because we don't get to lock that in until...
that's the risk, is you don't lock in until the end of the construction phase a year from now.
Okay. So, which would then in turn, if we went with that type of funding or loan, it could increase.
Well, it depends on how we negotiate. I mean, the banks could come back with a lock during a line of credit. That's not been determined yet.
Okay. And just one thing for members of the audience, most of you probably realize that, but according to our CC&Rs, the board can only impose a $300 assessment without taking it to a vote of the community. Therefore, even if we were to look at trying to fund some of this through a special assessment, we really probably couldn't do it until we had a vote of the homeowners. And if the majority of the people who voted yes. Just pointing that out.
More questions?
Yeah, so I'm back to what Teresa was saying. 7.5% with a line of credit. Oh, sorry. I'm back to what Teresa was saying. You got a 7.5% loan with line of credit, which is the gray line, wherever that thing is up there. But the reality is, with line of credit, it could very well be 8%, right?
There's two ways to look at it. Some banks are talking about locking us in for one rate during the construction phase and the same rate during the term. Other banks are not.
Okay, so you think there's
during
an
the
option
construction
for that?
during the construction phase, it's a floating rate,
Okay,
and then when it converts to a term is when you lock in the term
got
rate.
it. Okay, thank you.
So basically, we have to wait till we get the final T's and C's from the different lenders, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Campbell, what's the fee on the unused portion of the line of credit?
It hasn't been determined. I'd say not about 0.5 point a year.
Okay,
That's
so
kind of what I've seen in the past, but I can't speak to that right now because I don't know what
So any
terms are.
part of the line of credit that is unused, we're going to be paying somewhere around 0.5% for that,
Possibly.
for the potential use of those funds.
Possibly, yeah. For those that's about $30,000 a year for those who run $6 million.
So, any other questions from the board? I would like to point out that this has been quite an education process for me. The only loans I've ever taken out was a mortgage on my home and, car loans. I've not owned a commercial business. This was the life, the career that Campbell lived and breathed for his entire life. And so I'm just really thankful that we have somebody who understands this and can present the information to us in this manner.
I got one last question, Campbell. You had CIF contribution into reserves at 50% in your calculation, right?
Yes.
50. What is it today? Is it 25 today? So it's going up. So you have in the overall calculation a up in CIF to reserve.
Yeah, the sources and uses is based off our 2023 preliminary budgeting.
So in just a couple minutes, Joyce will walk us through other parts of funding considerations. But this is so that all of us are familiar with about what it would look like depending upon how much of the golf course renovation that we do want to borrow money to do.
Right, but that CIF does, these graphs are based on 50% CIFs
right. And
going forward. Right.
So Joyce is saying 50%. Every year when we have our board meeting to actually approve the budget, it's at that time that the board needs to state, and this is according to our CC&R revision in 2016, at that board meeting is when the board votes on how much of the CIF for that following year is going to go, what percentage of it is going to go into reserves and what percentage is staying in the CIF.
Correct. This slide here is just the illustration to show that we need financing. Yeah.
Well, it'll be whatever any board wants it to be. Once again. Yeah. This is just for assumptions so that...
These are just illustrations.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Campbell. Okay, we are now at that portion where we are looking at the 2023 budget update and funding considerations. Joyce will be taking us through this. I know some of you, if you're here, you are people who do go to some of the budget meetings, and you actually shop yourself. And so we're all aware of, this is a 40-year high in inflation, and this is going to be a tough year, 2023, and Joyce is going to try and take us through this now.
Ooh, that looks weird. Let's move off of that one. Let me get this out of here. Okay, so on Friday of last week, we went through the preliminary budget and some questions came up, and we've gone back to Terry and Walter and asked for a few more changes and for them to look at a few things. And so I just wanted to walk you through some of those changes so that we can start from that point. So the previous draft was showing a surplus, if you will, of $256,000. And the changes that we've incorporated now is the adjustment to the burden rate, what Lori was talking about earlier on our health insurance. So we pick up $16,000 there. F&B has gone back and taken a look at what would be the effect of the closure of the Mountain View Golf Course on their revenues on Mesquite, and looking at various options. And they've come back and said they think overall that would reduce their income or increase their subsidy by about $13,000. And this includes also opening up the preserve for a couple days a week when it's not open now, to provide some form of lunch on those days, since they're not open on Monday and Tuesday, and there will be more golfers up there. And so that is included. We took another look at the credit card fees, and Terry tells me, yeah, the preserve was a little too high, but the Mountain View was a little too low, and so it pretty much netted out to almost nothing here. Facilities, that was a big topic at last week's meeting. So the staff took another look at natural gas, pool gas, and electricity, and said, okay, a more reasonable budget is going to be something increasing those costs by $42,000. Then we took a look at the common area, and we said, okay, what if we started to do something now? And let's just take Anthony's estimate here for 1 year. And if we started to do that, let's put that in the budget and see how that looks, see if we can afford to do that. So that's the $187,000 increase in costs there. So in order to cover all of that, we need to increase the community service fee, or the dues, from the 10% that we were using to 13.3%. And that would bring us down to a bottom line here of $326,000. And our target is always to be at least $300,000, because we have some capital items that have to come out of our operating budget that will go for new equipment that doesn't come out of the reserve fund. So that's basically the changes. So now we're looking at a bottom line here of $326,000. So let's move ahead from there. And this is not the right one. Okay, so let me just get out of this. Okay. Slideshow. I need to go back to where I was before. Okay. Okay, so what I would like to go through now is how are we going to pay for all of this? So basically, we have three funds here. We have an operating fund, reserve fund, and a CIF, and they're all interrelated. And you can't really move money out of the reserve fund once it goes in there, so we need to be careful about that. But I just wanted to lay out here, how these things are interrelated. So this is based on the current budget here. So we'll start with we've got our community service fees, and this is at, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. There, that's a little better, I think. Okay. So we've got the community service fees, we've got a 13.3% increase that gives us about $10 million. And also assumed in our budget is a $300 special assessment. So that's the income that we have to work with. What happened to my?
And Joyce, that special assessment is to cover the expenditures that we wouldn't be taking in because of Mountain View being closed for 6 months, correct? Or is that?
Yes, that's basically it. Okay. Then from there, we take an allocation of those the income, the dues and the special assessment, and move it to the reserve fund. So that, in this scenario, is about $3.6 million. And remember, once it's over there, we can't move it back. Okay, the next step is, okay, we have the same kind of thing with the CIF. So this assumption is that we would have 180 home resales on which we would be collecting 1 year's worth of dues, and that would bring in about $585,000. And what's assumed in this budget is that 25% or 50% of that would be going into the reserve fund. And as Therese pointed out, that's a decision the board makes every year. And this is, this is where the assumption that's in here now, of course, this could be changed. Now, our net expenditures, excluding golf. So we've got $6,339,000 in the operating fund. That is our net amenities, F&B, fitness, lifestyle, theater. So their net cost, plus all of our operating costs like common area, facilities, G&A, patrol. So that's the cost for all of those things. What's in the reserve column there is what we pay for to replace our equipment and do major repairs. So for everything other than golf, that's nearly $2 million next year. And then there's a little bit there for the CIF. So that brings us down. We still have a surplus here in all of the funds. So the next step is, okay, let's add golf in. Let's see what that looks like. So when we put golf in here, next year is a really tough year. It's really been hard to project what that's going to be with the golf course closed and how that's going to affect people buying their annuals. But at this point, this is the estimate that we got from a collaboration between our golf staff and Club Life. So it looks like a $1,147,000 subsidy next year. And then on top of that, or from the reserve fund, we will have another $500,000 worth of equipment and other types of work like repairing the concrete, et cetera. So that the next line here on the renovation is sort of a placeholder at this point in time. This is saying, okay, what did we assume when we did the reserve study? So at that time, we had just a $3.7 million loan and at a 5.75% rate, which gives us $847,000 in loan payments. And all the rest of the renovation work, including the fees that are being paid to Gogol and Mills, would just be paid for out of the reserve fund. So when you come down there, then we're looking at the reserve fund is being depleted by about $1,381,000. And what this does then to our balance, in this part we're saying, okay, I started out the year, let's just look at the reserve fund for a moment. I started out the year at 4.198 as Campbell showed us before. All of the expenditures netted out to $1,381,000. So that reduces our ending fund balance to $2,817,000. and we have a target of 3 million. So we're a little bit under. If you look at the operating fund and follow the same logic there, we would be a bit over the target. And the target is basically 3 months' worth of operating expenses. So the target there is $1.8 million. So this is what the picture looks like now. And so the reason I wanted to do it this way was so that we could have an interactive way to say, okay, what if I change an assumption here? What does that do to my ending balance? So I'll give you an example because this is one that Dan called me this morning about. And he said, what if we changed the dues increase just to 15% and we didn't have a special assessment? What would that look like? So we'll just change this to 15%. You can see that goes from 10,244 to 10,398. So we pick up some. But if we make this 0, we got nothing here. We go down and we look at what does this do to our cash flow. This number right here becomes a deficit in our operating budget. And what that does is it takes our balance, our fund balance down below the target that we had. And of course, the 15% will be something that will be compounded as we go forward, so that we will be getting increased dues going forward. So if you said your dues went up to, 3,400, now they go up to 3,600, that compounds going forward.
So the idea behind doing the special assessment at 300 and reducing the dues is back to 13.3 was saying, really, we just need that extra 300 a year from people next year, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Joyce, line 25, you got a 3.7,575,000. That's not real, right? That's not what we're expecting. I don't even know the term on that.
If we
What's
wanted,
the term on that?
Right, that's what we had in the reserve study. If we wanted to say, okay, what would it be if we used the numbers that Campbell was showing us for a $6 million loan at 7.5% here? So if we were to plug that number in, we would be changing this. Oops, wrong thing.
Looks like what I would do.
I know. Looks just like what Dan would do. Okay. So we've got, what? Wait, where did we go? Oh, undo once again. Undo. Uh-oh. Here we go. 14, let me just type it in. But this number here, what we're paying right out, would be gone. So instead of paying the $857 plus the $2 million that would have to come out of our pocket, so to speak, we would just be making the loan payment. So that, for 1 year, would make our reserve fund look pretty good, as we saw on that graph before. So I think you can see that the biggest drivers are going to be, the dues, the special assessment, and the loan. If we change the CIF, even if it was 100%, it'd be another $300,000. That's not going to move us a whole lot. We could tinker with how many home sales if that looked to be an unreasonable number given this environment. You could say, okay, what if it's only 160? Then we're going to look at, 527. So it's, $10,000 or $20,000 less to the reserve fund, it doesn't move things a whole lot. So I think that my takeaway is, we have to set aside the loan until we have a little more information on what we can actually get. So this is just for illustrative purposes. But if we're just looking at the operating budget, we have to say, do we want to have a $300 special assessment in order to cover these costs, keep our operating balance at a healthy level? Or do we want to eat into our operating fund balance and actually show a deficit on the budget next year? And that's what would happen with this 15% increase. So,
for me, that 15%, I don't know what the final answer will be, but this is a snapshot in time of 2023. But to me, the 15% would actually accumulate over time and should give our operating fund quite a boost over time, as opposed to the snapshot of $300 assessment in 1 year. So I don't know what that looks like here. Obviously, it's a different view, but I would think if you looked at a 5-year horizon, the 15% dues increase as opposed to the 13.3 and $300 assessment would give you a better, balance, operating fund balance potentially. But anyway, you don't have that here, so that's just a quick.
I did run that this morning, just quickly, and it does help with the operating fund as you go forward. It's not really all that significant, though, because going from 13.3 to 15 isn't that much more. So it does help, because you're starting from a higher basis and compounding from that. So I just want to say that, we will be putting out a budget, posting a budget, preliminary budget on Wednesday, the 26th, because we have the town hall on November 2nd. And so we need to decide, we don't need to decide what the budget will be, but we need to decide what we want to put in that budget for comment at the town hall. And we don't need to decide today, but we need to decide real quick. So, because we need to if we're going to make changes, we need to give Terry a little time to run that through, because the whole budget will be posted online that shows, every department in all the detail that month by month that we have.
Well, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board if you prefer doing the special assessment to handle those one-time costs next year and lower the community service fee down or not. The 300 is something the board can do. I think it's kind of philosophical for people, so I'd just like to hear people's opinion.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure that I know, but I think one thing that would drive that decision is, we're going to be spending another $5 or $6 million in 2029, 30, whatever, for the other golf course. So that might drive us a lot more to raising the assessment as opposed to a special assessment. So I think we might want to look out 10 years and look at both courses and see if that drives a decision one way or the other.
I would guess in 2029 it's going to be probably closer to 8 or 9 million for the preserve.
So are you saying go with the 15% and not do the special? Okay.
I would go with the 13.3 and the special assessment, just having looked at the numbers for the last several weeks.
Don, what do you think?
I would agree with Seth, go with the special assessment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure Seth would agree with it too.
Just philosophically for me, it's the 13.3 and the 300, but, I'll go with whatever the majority of the board wants. It doesn't matter.
I don't think it makes that much difference either way. I personally just don't like the special assessment because you're penalizing people that just happen to live here at that point in time, but it's only $300. I don't think it makes that much difference.
Joyce, what do you think?
I would go with the 13.3 and the 300 special assessment. But if you'd like, I can run some models that go out 10 years, because we do have an inflated factor for the preserve out there, and we can see if there's a significant difference between the two.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
Is there a secret answer?
No, there is no secret answer. It's just the angst we'll all go through trying to nail this up. Members in the audience, do you have a feel one way or the other? Please come up to the mic.
As just a resident and not a board member, I think the $300 is more palatable than a 15% permanent increase in the dues. So that would be one thing. Second item I'd like to bring up, you had showed the first slide with the pluses and minuses. Can you put that one back up for me? And by the way, just as a general comment, some of the things you were referring to in other discussions, you were referring to notes, but we had nothing to refer to from the audience. It would be helpful if you'd had a slide up so we knew the different options. I want to go down to facilities and common area. Everything on that chart is existing with the exception of the level 5 work in the common area. I don't know if we should be taking on a new initiative like that in this budget environment. I would postpone that.
Okay, thank you.
Art Kopsak, Unit 29, Lot 26. Just one comment about the common area, level 5. You've got what was quoted as their cost, but the equipment that he needs to do that, the $78,000, is missing from this. You'd have to add that back in unless you have it some other place.
Yeah, it is somewhere else. We have a CIF budget,
right,
and it's as of now, it's in that draft budget. It's about $80,000 for that equipment.
That probably ought to be a footnote on this if you bring this up at the town hall.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, no other comments from the audience? All right, thank you. I would like to point something out. I'm not sure there's anybody, I think we probably would have heard by now if there had been, but you see the natural gas and electricity, we've changed that to add an additional $42,000 in costs to that line item. And this is just something we had, asked staff to be looking at possible ways to reduce subsidy. As most of you are aware, natural gas has increased significantly over the last year, and we're really not sure how soon those costs will come down or by how much. In the past years, we have, in order to save natural gas expenditures, during the winter months, we have taken our 3 primary pools and closed each one for 3 weeks during the winter months on a rotational basis. The idea being to save gas dollars. One of the other things that I guess staff was starting to look at is what if we just closed one pool for the entire time? Well, and we're not quite sure how that got out there to community, because it's just like, that was just another what if scenario and hadn't really gone anywhere. But we probably got over a couple hundred signatures stating that they did not think that was a good idea. And the only thing I'm trying to point out here is everything has a cost. So, and there's no magic here in these huge inflationary times. So if we're not going to close pools, then we have to put that extra $42,000 back in. That still doesn't preclude, if costs go out of the roof, whether we still might not do the 3 weeks rotation. We haven't done that for a couple years. Part of, the deal was COVID and everything else, but it very well could happen. I'm not saying that's totally off the table.
Therese, can I ask a question? Campbell did a good job. Talk to us about the loan and the options of the loan. Do we need to somehow now vote that, yeah, we should go get a loan? We don't need the details at this point in time. I don't know the next steps, because he's obviously pursuing work with banks and other lending institutions, and I don't know that we want to be sitting here holding up the train on maybe making that kind of a decision. I don't know. Campbell, maybe you can guide us. Is it time to okey-doke a loan, or do you want to wait until you're firm on what you want to do?
I think we should wait. I think we should wait till we're more firm, just because we don't know what the banks are going to approve and what the costs are going to be.
All right.
Chuck mentioned fees. I mean, there's always a fee with a loan. No, I think we need to figure out what we're being offered before we know what to vote on.
Okay. Well, the next official meeting is November 18, right? We got a town hall November 2 for the budget review. But that's not necessarily we could vote, I guess. I just want to be clear that we're not somehow holding this train up a little bit in terms of that.
No, he's going to pursue what's available for us.
Okay.
And once we have true T's and C's, or whatever you call it in the loan world, then he can present that to us. If we need to, we can have a working board meeting to approve it. If we all agree, we can do a UWC. But I think the evidence is there. We need some kind of loan.
There's no question about that. My concern is a bit of transparency. Big deal, big loan, big commitment, and I would like to think that homeowners had a chance to at least weigh in when that decision is made. So we could call a special meeting just for that. That would be my preference if timing doesn't work out for November 18. But I really would like to do it in front of people that would have good questions, potentially. That's my bias.
In an optimistic world, maybe we'll get more than one offer. So we can decide instead of just taking something.
Yeah, somebody.
If you're willing to give us $6 million for 3%, I think we would take it.
It'll be from overseas, Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, I would think we're probably going to have a special session. Once you get your specifics, I suspect we're going to have a special session to go through that. The only other thing that I would like to think about or have Joyce's input on is from a capital improvement. I'd be curious if we raise the capital improvement to like 95%, realizing that we can only commit for the first year, but obviously that would probably seriously obligate the future boards, what that would do. And then the other thing is there's, you know, in the construction contract, there's two things that, at least in my mind, are purely brand new. One is the turf reduction, which is brand new. The other is the cart path, which is brand new. In my view, I would think we'd be able to take those out of CIF. Those are $500,000 between those two. So if we took $500,000 and took it out of CIF, it would reduce the total contract from 5.6 to 5.1. Not sure what kind of impact that would have, but I think, you know, we got a lot of money sitting in CIF. I'd sure like to use it now to help relieve some of the financial burden from the residents, as opposed to keeping it there for some future thing we may or may not ever build. And I guess that would be something I'd like to look at, because I think the CC&Rs give us that flexibility to do kind of pretty much whatever we need to do from a financial standpoint as a board. So anyway, that's, I guess, the only thing I'd like us to at least investigate.
Okay, I would, that's a good segue into the next item on the agenda, and which is, oh, I'm sorry, Art, please go ahead.
Yes. One question I had was, there was discussion earlier about the mesquite. Well, my question would be is, why not just close the mesquite, move all the food service over to the main area, and let the mesquite building become an activity center, paid for activity center, similar to HOA 1, so you would have an income there to help offset that.
That's a good comment. The board will take that under consideration. Probably it will end up, because the closure wouldn't occur till next May, I think the two new board members would need to be seated to weigh in on that, I think.
Okay, thank you. I'd like it to be considered. It seemed to me to be a good cost center to develop funding based on what we've seen or what I've seen earned by the activity center at HOA 1.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make one comment? I guess we're off the budget thing a little bit till the next thing. Right. I just want, Terry's here. You're still awake, right, Terry? You're down there. I just wanted to thank Terry and Walter and obviously the entire staff for all this hard work. This budget's been difficult, been very challenging. Everybody's had an opinion, and they've been gracious about trying to work through this very diligently. I want to thank Joyce and Campbell for all their work. This has not been easy, or any of the work is not over either, so don't quit. You still got a couple of weeks of having to do this. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys, because it really has been a challenge. You've done a great job of getting us to this point, and it's been a lot of hard work. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. The last item I have on the agenda, and this is CIF Prioritization for expenditures. It gets back to the CIF fund. And my first order of business, what I want to talk about is, we're all aware that our common area maintenance facility is inadequate and very antiquated. And we have been trying, or past boards have been trying to figure out what to do with that. And so from my perspective, you know, we had identified some possible area that, you know, maybe Robeson would, you know, like over where Orbital is, and maybe would they be willing to sell us that land so we could build something there. I've pinged again and again. I haven't heard anything. But I think that I would like to throw on the table for the 2023 year that our highest priority for CIF expenditure is to rectify the common area maintenance yard. Whether it stays where it is, but we have to enlarge it and put a new building in there, or new trailers or whatever, or we are able to acquire land. But I don't think we can afford to not do anything any longer. And I think it's our highest priority, and I just want to hear some discussion. Just your thoughts, please.
I agree. In fact, it bothers me a little bit because we're dealing with level 5, we're dealing with new crews, equipment. I don't know where all these people are going to go. I really don't. What we've got is well over capacity at this point in time. So it's part and parcel to what we're talking about in terms of level 5 improvement. And I totally agree. If you've ever walked through that area, you'd say, oh my goodness, I'm not real proud of what we're helping our employees with. So I agree with you.
Okay, no other discussion? All right. I'd like to go ahead then and adjourn this meeting. I do have a few things that I'd like to bring up to our audience. Really, I won't keep you that much longer. For those of you who missed it on Wednesday, we had the candidates forum. There are 3 individuals running for the 2 open board positions. That was recorded, and hopefully sometime today, but you will get an e-blast. If you missed the being here for that, it will be available as a recording for you to take a look at. And so the other thing that's happening today is you will be getting from Diane, I Vote HOA. From I Vote HOA is one of the email addresses. In the primary email address will be getting an email giving you the opportunity to go to the electronic software and going ahead and casting your vote. So you might want to watch the presentations and then cast your vote. I would also like to remind you that we are now, or the Employee Appreciation Committee is now accepting donations for our annual Employee Appreciation Fund Drive. This is totally funded by us, our homeowners. It doesn't go into the HOA at all, and these become gifts for all of our employees in December at their annual function. We keep everything separately so that the gifts that we are giving the employees don't become tax deductible if it were to have been funded through the HOA. So please think about how hard our staff work for us and be generous with your donation. And just one more thing, you will continue to get more information over the following week. On November 1, we are moving to our new software platform for the HOA, TEI, and be on the lookout for that information. And with that, thank you. Thank you all for spending all this time with us today. Okay, if there are any other comments that we didn't already cover today, if you would like, yes?
Just a quick comment, because we're in the last 2 weeks of the election process. There have been some people who have had signs stolen or defaced or gotten threatening letters. So I would like to ask if Walter could talk with the HOA general manager and the 2 HOAs could put something out, just reminding people that that stuff is not acceptable and against the law.
Okay, and so you're talking about the general election, the political election, not our, okay, thank you.
Antagonism in the community that we don't need, so it would be nice to get them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks all.